All right. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Moneyline MMA coverage of UFC Vegas 100, the 100th event at the Apex Arena. Of course, those were started back in the COVID days when sports were essentially banned, and we were we were void of entertainment in the sports world because of the pandemic. But the UFC said, nope, we will make our own facility and hold our own events. Thus, the UFC, not the Performance Center, but the Apex itself was born, and we have now had 100 events, with it being capped off with Carlos Prates fighting Neil Magny. Before we get too far into our picks for this Saturday, let's quickly cover our picks from last Saturday, in which both Jose and I go 3-1 with one of those 5 picks. With the fight being canceled, of course, we had picks on the Derek Lewis and Jonata Denise fight, in which it was canceled. Apparently, Derek Lewis was ill or something along those lines. It seems to be very vague as to why the fight was canceled. I still haven't really seen. I didn't really look too deep, but other than just seeing like he had an illness of some sort. And from what I saw, Jonata Denise was booked against somebody else already to fight soon. So it seems like they've completely scrapped the whole idea in the first place, or Derek Lewis just isn't planning on coming back soon because he's that unhealthy. Either way, Jose and I both hit with our 5 weights that were differing picks. My Mike Malott 5 weight and Jose's Youssef Zalal 5 weight all hit, as well as Brandon Moreno. So if you look at the top 3 picks from Moneyline MMA last week, other than Rose, of the top 4, 3 of the top 4 hit. So both of our 5 weights hit. We're looking good. And Jose and I are back to being on streaks, or at least I am. Unfortunately, Jose lost his Michelle Pereira 5 weight, but I am on a 5 weight streak again, in which I haven't lost a 5 weight since Joe Anderson Brito got robbed, which is an absolute disgrace. But either way, that's still 5 in a row, and we're going to keep that heat coming because we're going to stop. I was just thinking, no, there's nothing else we need to recap really from that card. Youssef Zalal gets the finish submission. Mike Malott gets the decision. Nothing really too crazy from that. But we're going to continue the 5 weight heat coming in this card. And I'm actually going to bring us to a preliminary event. Before we get too far into it, I'll explain to anyone that might be new here in that we do our picks here in a 5 weight system, with 5 weight being the heaviest, aka the most confident pick, and the 1 weight being the least confident pick. Any of the 13 currently scheduled fights for UFC Vegas 100 are eligible, and we will always go with our best bets first, our most confident picks. So my most confident best bet of Saturday is going to be our boy Chuck Buffalo, Charles Radke. He's currently listed as the 5th fight of the card on the preliminaries, and he's going to be fighting Matthew the Semi Semmelsberger. I think this stylistic matchup is great for Chuck Buffalo because both of these guys are kind of nitty gritty, but in the end, I trust Chuck Buffalo's ability to get a finish way more than Matt Semmelsberger. I think we've seen the chin from Semmelsberger in the past, taking some big hits and not getting finished. Of course, Uros Medic, though, was able to finish him in the 3rd round last year. So, I don't know. I think Chuck Buffalo, he's coming off of a tough loss, getting finished by Carlos Prates, who's now in the main event for this card, right? So that's a very respectable loss. And other than that, he's kind of walked through his opponents, if you ask me. Okay, he gets a decision win against Mike Mathitha, but other than that, he's kind of finished most of his opponents inside and outside the UFC. So, I don't know, Chuck Buffalo looking pretty good to me here. He hasn't really been able to use his wrestling game, or he hasn't really had to, I guess, either in the UFC. And I just think if he does get to a position where he's able to use that against the Semi, I think it's going to be even more in his favor. I think he can win rounds with ground control. Semmelsberger's got a very low chance to win this fight. I think his only path to victory would be a decision win. I highly doubt he finishes Chuck Buffalo, and with that, he's my 5 weight. Jose, what do you think?
Yeah, Nick. So for this one, I'm going with Chuck Buffalo as well. And he is my 3 weight. Reason being is like even though Summersberger is coming off like a 3 losses. Again, like you mentioned, he is tough to put out. Most of the time, he out of his 7 losses, he has lost 4 by decision. And he barely gets knocked out. But I do think Charlie, like he's a tough guy. I know he's gonna step forward and dish it out a lot. And right now, unfortunately, the UFC stats aren't showing anything for Charlie. But for what they do show for Summelsberger is that he only lands like 3.78 significant strikes per minute, and he absorbs more. He absorbs 4.21 significant strikes per minute. So knowing Charlie, he's gonna want to step forward and he's gonna throw some heavy haymakers, put him against the cage, and as you mentioned, he's gonna do a lot of control because Charlie's even again it doesn't show here on the UFC stats, but Charlie is a really good grappler. So I think he can even Sommelsberger's only been submitted once, but I do think Charlie can take Sommelsberger's back and get him via rear naked choke. I can see that happening, or just ultimately ground and pound to a decision victory. Ultimately, I have Charlie Radke for this one, and like I said, I think he's going to be tough. I think he's either going to win by decision with the control or submit Sommelsberger. Possibly knock him out, but I think he's probably going to submit him more than knockout. And the reason is too is Sommelsberger, he's a big guy, so on the feet, even though Sommelsberger absorbs more hits per minute than what he dishes out. He is the bigger guy. He's 6'1", Charlie Radke's 5'9", and Sommelsberger does have a 3-inch reach advantage over Charlie Radke. So Charlie's definitely gonna be working with some range there. So that's why I think that Charlie's gonna dominate more once this fight gets to the ground. Ultimately, yeah, I have Charlie Radke taking the win on this one, and he is my 3 weight.
Sounds good. So we will agree, and that's a combined 8 points of confidence from us here at Moneyline MMA. And it seems that we're pretty agreeable on the fact that Chuck Buffalo should be able to get the job done here. And he's just looked so dominant, honestly. Um, yeah. That being said, Semmelsberger, tough guy to take out. A couple quick other notes I'll mention before moving on is that the line opened at around like I believe minus 150, minus 155, and he's currently showed to be minus 172 on FanDuel. Semmelsberger's plus 134, so we've got some money coming in on Radke, which I like to see early. The smart bettors are understanding that that's great value for Radke, so bet on him while you can. There's still a little bit of value to be found, but if he once he gets to that 2-to-1 odds, that minus 200 area, it's just not going to be favorable for him. And also, you mentioned briefly, Jose, that you're not seeing Radke's stats. I briefly showed it for the stream. Radke does have a positive striking differential in the sense that he does land 3.2 strikes and absorbs 3. So it's not net. It's not that positive, but at least it's more positive than the semi, which indicates that he's not taking as much damage, hopefully, and he should be able to last it out against semi.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that.
But yeah, no problem. So that being said, we'll move on to Jose's 5 weight.
Yes, so for my 5 weight, this is going to be the fight. It's in the middle of the card. It's going the main card that is, and it's a women's strawweight bout between Carolina Kowakiewicz and Denise Gomes. Right now, Denise Gomes is a big betting favorite at minus 460, while Carolina is the betting underdog at plus 320. This one, I'm going with the younger Denise Gomes. She's 24 years old. She's coming off a win right now. Granted, it is a split decision win. I just think that she's gonna get this one. In terms of Carolina, she's already coming off a just one loss. But other than that, she's looked dominant in her four fights before that. But I think just the age is getting to me with Carolina. She's only 39 years old, and I remember she hasn't fought for the title since like 2016. And since then, she's just kind of like I'm even surprised she's still in the UFC because she did go on a 5-fight losing streak, and then she built up a 4-fight winning streak, and now she's jumping off again on a loss. And I just don't know what really is left for Carolina to do in the UFC in general. She's still uh, going out the way and not getting finished out of her 8 losses. She's only been knocked out once and submitted twice. So I think this would be a good showcase for Denise to ultimately just get another decision win. I don't know if she'll knock. I mean, she could knock out Carolina. I have seen Carolina actually get knocked out viciously. I think it was by. I thought it was by.
Andrade.
Jessica Andrade. Yeah, was it Andrade?
Yeah.
I just can't find it exactly, but
Andrade.
yeah, and so that was a while ago. But I remember that fight. specifically. So I think Gomes can actually do something similar as well, given that 9 of her wins, 6 of them come via KO/TKO, and I believe they're about the same. How they match up physically is Carolina is the slightly taller fighter just by 1 inch and has a 1 inch reach advantage. Carolina does have really good Muay Thais. She lands 5.71 significant strikes per minute, but she does absorb 5.55. So I do think that's why I think she absorbs quite a bit. While as in terms of Denise, even though Denise has not been in the UFC nearly as long as Carolina, she has been already in the UFC for quite some time since 2022 and has had 5 fights then. I think Denise is more than well prepared enough to get this win, even though she does have that. She did lose unanimously to Angela Hill, but I honestly think like Carolina. I'm surprised she hasn't even really fought against Angela Hill. Like I could be, yeah. So I would have thought like I don't want to even put them the same. I think Angela Hill is just a little more grew in terms of better wrestler, and I think she's just able to kind of do the smart victories in terms of like just more control time on the floor and get the decision victories. As whereas Carolina, she herself, she does have quite a bit of decisions, but I feel like she's just more of a striker than wrestler. So that being said, I think Gomes is going to be the better grappler in this one too, and just have overall more control time and just get a decision victory in this one. I feel really good about Gomes. Yeah, she's my 5 weight. Nick, do you have any thoughts on this fight?
My thoughts are that I in the end would agree with Gomes if I was to make a pick on this fight. I just avoided it as a specific weight because I do still have a lot of respect for Kovalevich and just the sheer experience she has in the UFC, and she still has a positive striking differential with that experience and all the high end names she's fought. I've just been really impressed at her ability to come back from a long losing streak and get some quality wins. And most recently, Denise Gomez like barely edges out a win, although she barely edges out a win because she got taken down 5 times in 3 rounds. So it's kind of what happens, and I don't think that's going to be even close to a possibility against Kovalevich. So in the end, I see Denise Gomez as the better fighter here, and I think she does win the fight 6 or 7 times out of 10. But with Kovalevich's experience and just the fact that Denise Gomez didn't really pop in her last fight, it was just like barely on the edge of good enough to win. I want to see her do a little more. It's her biggest test of her career for sure. And if she can win this fight, then I'm ready to be on her side. So that being said, though, that'll be Jose's 5 weight. And if you want to ride with Jose on his lock of the week, definitely take a look at betting on Gomez or some other variation because she is a pretty heavy favorite. That being said, let's move on to my 4 weight. And my 4 weight is going to be on the main event of Saturday. And just as a note, this card will be starting at 3 p.m. Central Time with the prelims. So it'll be like a 7 p.m. Card. So it's still going to be kind of normal evening time for most of us. But in any case, the main event of the evening, Neil Magny and Carlos Prates. And this is me taking Carlos Prates and avoiding making him the obvious 5 weight. But Carlos Prates might as well be pretty much the same confidence as a 5 weight. You know, he obviously, Neil Magny is a very tough guy to take out. So I'm not going to sit here like Neil Magny is just done for. He's going to get finished quickly, blah, blah, blah. But I think it's obvious why Carlos Prates is a minus 770 favorite. In a UFC main event, that's crazy. That's a crazy huge favorite. I'm not even sure John Jones is that big of a favorite to beat Stipe. And that's wild because, I mean, let's be honest. John Jones is going to beat Stipe. So let's look right now. Okay, John Jones is minus 620. I'm looking right now on FanDuel. John Jones is minus 620, Stipe's plus 400. So you're telling me that Carlos Prates is a bigger chance to beat Neil Magny than John Jones to beat Stipe. Interesting. So with that said, be careful with your money on this one because Neil Magny's a stud, right? And he's not a guy I want to bet minus 770 against unless it's like one of the GOATs. I get he just got finished against Michael Morales, but that's a stud. Like, that is a genuine prospect, and he's getting stuck against another tough prospect, Carlos Prates, coming off finish after finish. I mean, talk about a guy deserving a championship I mean, what in the world? I believe he's at 9 straight KOs. 9. Not only has he won 9 in a row, but he has finished 9 in a row standing. That's crazy. That is crazy stuff right there. And I'm not about to say that that ends against Neil Magny, a guy who's kind of been struggling, a guy who's been hot and cold, a guy who's really kind of been a gatekeeper for a long time now. And, if this was Carlos Prates' UFC debut, I'd be way more nervous, right? But we saw him finish the Leech, and the Leech is no joke. I'm ready to see Carlos Prates continue that knockout streak here against Neil Magny, and that's my forward. What do you think, Jose?
Yeah, I agree with you on this one. Actually, I also have Prates. He's my four-weight as well. And as you mentioned, yeah, dude is on an unbelievable streak right now, with in and out of the UFC, and he's already been given some good competition already. Beat Trevin Giles, Charlie Radke, and Zhili Yang. Granted, like Trevin Giles just lost, and Zhili Yang is no longer in the UFC anymore. But that being said, like still for how long he's been in the UFC, they already have given him some dudes that have had a good amount of UFC experience besides Charlie Radke. And that being said, Neil Magny, he's they're just giving him pretty much like he's the ultimate gatekeeper for the welterweights. They just give him anyone that's up and coming or dudes that are just like every once in a while, Neil Magny's had his chance of like he may actually be able to push to jump into the top five, like when they match him up against Gilbert Burns and Shavkat, Robbie Lawler, like just different times of his career. He's had like moments where like if he beats them, he is going to start becoming a little more elite, and he's elite to some degree, but not top five for sure. Definitely can hang out in the top 10. So this is a good test for Carlos Prates to really break in and cement himself in the top 10. And that being said, like Neil Magny, I think the way it's going to be is like he does very well holding people against the cage and getting a clinch. That's what Neil Magny does best. But Carlos Prates, even though Neil Magny is the slightly bigger guy, Carlos Prates does match up physically with Neil Magny pretty well. Neil Magny being 6'3" with an 80-inch reach. Carlos Prates is only 6'1" with a 78 difference right there with the reach. And Carlos Prates throws more per minute than Neil Magny. So I think Carlos Prates is definitely going to be coming in with the heat. He has a good reach, again, not as long as Neil Magny, but long enough to really land on Neil Magny straight up on the face, kind of like Ian Gary. Ian Gary, another tall guy, not as tall as Neil, not as big and as long as Neil Magny, but close enough, and he just dominated Neil Magny unanimously. So I think this can be something similar, but the only difference is I actually think Prates is more likely to knock out Neil Magny. So he can probably play a similar game that Ian Gary did, but instead of not being as boring, I think Carlos Prates is going to be more aggressive and have more power and be able to actually sleep Neil Magny. Neil Magny, out of his 12 losses, he's only been slept 3 times, but I do think Prates could be one of the very few that does it. If not, I just definitely see him beating Neil Magny unanimously. So I agree with you on this one, Nick. I also have Prates as my four-weight.
Yeah, sounds good, man. Not much more to say than that. I think you summed it up pretty well. Prates is a guy to look out for in this division, and if he gets to that 10 KO in a row streak, at this point he just finished two of the higher and middle end, I guess you could say middle to upper end guys in the division. So what's next? A top fiver, I would think. So we'll see what's coming up for Carlos Prates. Should he get the KO win as we are predicting, that should really shoot him up there. I mean, maybe not top five, but he should at least be getting a guy like Gilbert Burns or something like that. So we'll see. We'll see. But until then, Carlos Prates actually is also 8 total confidence points worth. So he ties with Chuck Buffalo at 8. So our two best bets of the week will be Chuck Buffalo and Carlos Prates. Go ahead and might as well make a little parlay with them both. And that should be able to pay out for you on Saturday. But without further ado, we can go to Jose's 2-weight.
Yes, so for my two-weight, this is actually the middleweight bout between Gerald Mearshart and Rainier D. Ritter. Right now, Gerald Mearshart is a big. He's actually the betting underdog at plus 215, while Rainer de Ritter is a big betting favorite at minus 290. For this one, uh, I'm going with good old reliable in my eyes has always been Gerald Mearshart. Not being, I mean, I am a little biased because he's from Wisconsin, but dude has, like for being 36, he has 37 wins and 17 losses. Like, dude is experienced to the max. And out of his 37 wins, he has 29 won by submission. And, we just saw most recently, like, he got dominated on the feet by Edmund Shabazian. But then, when you go to the floor, Edmund Shabazian, once they took it to the ground, Gerald Mearshart got a hold of his neck and was able to do an arm triangle choke against him. So, and then before that, he also submitted Brian Barberina. So, Gerald Mearshart still got a lot left in the tank, and he's a true test. And Rainer de Ritter, that just shows a lot what they think of him. I believe, yeah, he was a former double champ over at One Championship, and right now he is coming off win, a first round TKO win out of UAE Warriors earlier this year. So that being said, like, yeah, I think he's gonna come in hot, and he's 34 years old too, so he's quite a big, quite of an experienced guy. And he even though um he just won by TKO, I do see that out of his 17 wins, he has 11 submissions. So this is actually could potentially be a really good grappling match, and this could be someone that could match Jill Mearshart in terms of the grappling game, and it would have a harder time getting submitted. Yeah, Rainer de Ritter has never been submitted, so that's probably a big reason why he's also a big favorite in this one. Could Gerald Mearshart be the first one? And honestly, there's a lot of guys on the list that Gerald Mearshart has submitted for the first time, or has been like the exception, like one of the very few instances. So I do have a lot of faith in Gerald Mearshart in this one. I like him as the underdog. I don't know if he could actually get the submission over Rainer de Ritter, but I think he can be good enough to get the decision win. But obviously, if he's going to get a finish, I'm going to always go with the submission. So that being said, I'm going Gerald Mearshart. He is my two-way again because I have not really seen enough about Rainer de Ritter, but I do believe that his jiu-jitsu, his grappling will be a good matchup for Gerald Mearshart and will be more of a challenge for Gerald Mearshart. What are your thoughts for this one, Nick?
So yeah, funnily enough, I agree on Gerald, and we have the same weights with two weight on Gerald, and honestly, a lot of the same things that you're saying. Some of the things I can add on though is that when I look at Rainier, I think one thing that I'm seeing a lot, I'm not seeing enough of, I should say, in regards to this fight is the fact that Rainier, as I understand it, in his other promotions that he was fighting for, ONE FC, he's fighting at 205. He's fighting at light heavyweight. So it makes me wonder, like, the fact that this fight is going to be at middleweight, does that mean that he's just fighting at 205 because he didn't want to cut the weight and he could beat whoever, aka he wasn't fighting guys that are that good, or like is he recognizing that the UFC is talented way above like what he's used to fighting? So if he tried to fight light heavyweight at his size in the UFC, he would just get cleaned up by a guy like Pereira. Like, come on, you weren't even gonna take me down, dude. I'm gonna knock you out. Like, I don't quite know which of those it is, but I just think it's fascinating that he's gonna fight at 185, and he's just fought at 285, 205, excuse me, for as far as I can see his entire career. As far as I can see, this will be the first fight he's ever fighting in his professional career outside of in the World Fighting League back in 2017. He fought at the at 185. So it's been since 2018. It looks like 2018 is the last time he fought at professional 185 pounds. I just like to favor a guy who's been doing it. Gerald Mearshart has all the experience in the world. He's the comeback king, really. It seems like he's getting beat up, and then he gets a submission. I mean, he was not beating Edmund Shabazian when he finished him in the last fight. But does it really matter? No, because he got the submission. This will be an interesting style matchup. Of course, Rainier is like a really heavy submission game, too. He's never been finished, has 12 finishes under his belt. But it's just like, I'm left wondering how good that competition really is when he's doing it at 205 easily, and then losing even his last few fights before his most recent one in UAE Warriors. He lost 3 times in a row in one championship before leaving. So just saying, Like, it makes you just wonder, is all I got to say. And there's no way I'm betting on a guy as a favorite, as that heavy of a favorite in his UFC debut, when you don't even know how good the competition he's fought is. Uh, I'm sure people out there know a lot more about ONE FC than I do, and they can tell me a lot more about some of the guys he's fought and how good they truly might be. But I just think it's fair to have question marks there. And with that said, I definitely agree on Meerschaert. There's too much value. There's too much experience on his side.
Right. So yeah, you can put that Gerald Meerschaert as a lock for us too, but just kind of a low confidence, just because we just haven't seen enough of D Ritter. And
Yeah.
yeah, and it will say a lot because he probably cut weight too, because like as you mentioned, he used to be 205. He probably cut weight too. You have to just kind of see, like, like he may go against a little bit tougher competition. Joe Meerschaert's more experienced than him, and if Joe Meerschaert beats him, that kind of makes you question his entire resume. Like, and I'm already looking at the last guy he just beat in the first round, and dude's not really nearly as experienced, and was already coming off a loss too. So
Yes. Yeah.
no one really big. So yeah, like I'm interested. And I wouldn't be surprised if he does beat Meerschaert. Then maybe afterwards he'll probably go back up to 205. Like I know I've seen some guys make their debuts and then eventually go up or down and kind of adjust how they feel. But yeah, that being said, this is a good underdog for us. Our dog of the week most likely.
Yeah, I think he is the dog of the week for sure. And like you said, though, a little less confidence, no doubt, less confidence than the Chuck Buffalo and Prates, because I trust the UFC's scouting as well. Like, the UFC doesn't often, like, it's happened, but they don't often sign a guy that didn't get in through like the Contender Series or something. They don't often just go out there and sign guys that actually are trash. Like, usually they sign a guy and he's fucking worth signing. So whether or not Rainier DeRitter is good enough to beat Meerschaert, we'll see. But I will say Meerschaert's nowhere near the top of the middleweight division. So, this is the kind of guy you have to beat if you're Rainier and you think you're going to make it in the UFC. You have to beat Jared Meerschaert for sure. So that'll be that. But yeah, GM3 will be Moneyline's lock of the week. And I will head over to the co-main event of Saturday afternoon for my three weight, in which I am picking Miles Johns. He's currently the favorite at minus 156. Cody Garbrandt is plus 122. So this is my three weight. I really do think Miles Johns is as good or better in all areas of the game, and that's mainly why. And that right up there could be up to debate. And those who disagree with me might just say, well, no, he's not. Cody Garbrandt is a better knockout artist, and maybe he is, maybe he's not. But I can say for sure that I like Miles Johns wrestling too. And Cody Garbrandt has okay wrestling, but I don't think he's been able to use it whatsoever. He just got dominated by Figgy on the ground. I just don't. I don't think it's that great. Miles Johns hasn't really used it to get any crazy submissions or any submissions at all either. So it's not a situation where I think it's like a strong suit for either fighter. But in the end, I trust Miles Johns and his chin and his boxing game more than I trust Cody Garbrandt. Miles Johns has been able to come off a couple solid wins recently via decision, using his standing boxing game and working in takedowns as needed. And I think he's going to be able to continue to do that against Cody Garbrandt. And that's really about it. Jose, what do you think?
Yeah, so for this one, Nick, I'm actually going with the underdog, Cody Garbrandt. And the reason is because I still think that he still has enough a lot in the tank for him. He is the former champ, and even like we have seen him like take some brutal losses, but he's out of his losses. He does have only 6 losses still, and like yeah, that does add up. And 4 of them are via KO, so that's TKO, and he's been getting more finish lately. I agree. Yeah, like if Miles Johnson probably has a high chance of finishing Cody Garbrandt, because we already seen Cody Garbrandt doesn't have a chin so much, but he is still 33 years old. He's only 3 years older than Miles Johns, and I still think Cody Garbrandt has the power in his hands. Like even when he's been knocked out, before he got knocked out. He's got knocked out. He still has shown that he can rock his opponents and stun them. And I think like if Cody Garbrandt just can learn to keep his hands up better and have better head movement, like I think like he could honestly win this either unanimously or finish Miles Johns as well. Even though Miles Johns, he's out of his 2 losses, he's only been KO'd once and then submitted once. I think Cody Garbrandt is a good candidate to knock out Miles Johns, or if not, still beat him unanimously. Again, he is my one weight though because um, Miles Johns, like I said, I also believe Miles Johns could knock out Cody Garbrandt because Cody Garbrandt definitely has shown he has a worse chin compared to Miles. So that being said, I still have some faith in the former champ. Not much to really say on that as well. He has good fast hands. He has the power. The only thing is the striking difference. It does look better for Miles Johns, but Cody Garbrandt has been in the UFC longer. But here it does show that in the UFC's website that Cody Garbrandt is definitely getting pieced up more than what he lands. And that I think he is bouncing back and kind of working his way up from like kind of getting pushed back, fighting TJ Dillashaw, losing to him twice, and then getting knocked out by Pedro Munoz. We're losing to Rob Font, Kai Kara France, Davison Figueredo. I mean, these are all like tough dudes. Like none of these are these are former champs and title contenders right there and top 5 guys. So he has not lost to bums whatsoever. And that means I'm not saying that Miles Johnson's a bum either. Like I'm like or anything like that. Like I'm just saying like I haven't seen enough on Miles Johns to really assess where he belongs in this division. And so that being said, I'm still putting some faith and I like Cody Garbrandt as the underdog just because of the power he still has in his hands. And as long as he doesn't get knocked out, I do think he can win this fight. So that being said, I got Cody Garbrandt, but is very low confidence. He is my one weight.
Fair enough, man. So we do have a disagreement finally. And honestly, man, I was kind of thinking about it too. I feel like this is one of those fights where, as a listener, like if you're listening, you probably already had your mind made up and it wasn't going to change. You based this, like almost nothing we could say would really change your mind. You either believe Cody Garbrandt still has it or he doesn't. And I think it kind of comes down to that. Like I sit here and I look at Cody Garbrandt's every fight he's had since he had the belt. And the 3 people he's beat are Rafael Assunção, who's a great all-time fighter, but he's not like amazing. Like he was always just average. And Trevin Jones and Brian Kelleher. Those are the 3 guys Cody Garbrandt has beaten since he has the belt in 2016. It's like, okay, like I get he's fighting the top of the division. Yes, he's fighting dogs every time, but if he's a dog too, then he has to win some of those. Like so does Max Holloway. He fights the dogs and he wins sometimes too. It's like where's the Cody Garbrandt that actually beat Dominic Cruz and took the belt? We saw that one night. We saw that for 25 minutes, and it hasn't ever come back since because TJ finished him, and ever since it's like, oh, his brain is mush, man. Sorry to say, he got clocked a little early. I'm with you. Like he's like 33 or 32 years old. Like Cody Garbrandt is so close to his MMA prime still, you would think, but like how can I look at anything but the stats and see, well, he's gotten finished. Oh yeah, he finished a middle low end fighter. And yeah, I guess you could also to your point, like Miles Johns is not like super proven by any means. Miles Johns has not beaten any guy as higher up in the division as Garbrandt. So this is certainly a prove it spot for Miles Johns, 100%.
I would say the most impressive name I do see on Miles Johns' record actually was before the UFC, and he does have a win over Adrian Yanez, but that was back in 2018. So, Adrian is shown to be a different animal since then. But
Yeah.
that's a win that I think aged very well for him.
Yeah, good call for sure. I agree though. Yeah, Giannis has looked really good lately in the UFC, and um, either way, that'll be my 3 weight. Miles Johns. Jose disagrees with a 1 weight on Garbrandt, and that will take us into one last fight for us to discuss by doing process of elimination. We only have 1 weight left, which is my 1 weight, and with that, I'm going to be looking. I believe this will be the main event of the prelims, and I think they've chosen wisely. You know, Dana said it in the past. They want to put a fight at the main event of the prelims that's exciting. In fact, arguably the second or third most exciting fight of the night in terms of just maybe not name power, but just matchups and what's going to create excitement and blood and retweets and all of that on social media, right? And I think this is a great choice by them taking Nicholas Dalby and Elizu. I'm probably butchering the pronunciation there. Elizu Zaleski dos Santos, or whatever his name is, right? I think they're doing a great job here. This is a rematch, actually, which I didn't realize until I started looking into this fight, that it's actually a rematch. These guys fought for the both of their UFC debuts was fighting each other back in 2015, and it was a dog fight. Nicholas Dalby ended up getting the win via split decision, in part because he got 6 takedowns and had some control time, but it was absolute dogfight. And both of those guys have kind of had different trajectories. Really, Ilio Zaleski has had a lot more wins. Like, he lost that fight to Dalby and then went on a huge winning streak and has only lost to the Leech, Muslim Salikov, Hinat Fakrdinov, and then, of course, Randy Brown. So higher-end fighters for sure. And interestingly enough, Nicholas Dalby also coming off a loss to Renat Fakrdinov. So although technically Ilio Zaleski only got a draw, not necessarily a full loss, but neither of those guys could get a win against Hinat. But otherwise, Dalby's 4-1 in his last 5, and Ilio Zaleski's 2-1 in his last 5. So it's just really interesting to see these guys' career trajectories, but I don't want to babble on about that too long. I'm really just taking Nicholas Dalby as my one weight here in this fight. Obviously, it's a one weight because I have somewhat low confidence, but I like what Dalby's done more for me recently, especially if we look from 2023 onwards. Dalby won 3 fights in 2023 and most recently lost to Renat via split decision. It was a very close fight. I thought Dalby put in a lot of work and showed that he is a dog still, and he's ready to push his opponent to the extent, the full extent of the opponent will need to go to get the win. And not that Elizeu is any bit of a pushover. He went 3 rounds with Renat also, and then 3 rounds with Randy Brown. But in all reality, against Randy Brown, he really didn't do a thing. Like, the only thing he did against Randy Brown was wrestle. It was boring, and maybe that fight left a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth because it just felt like Elizeu knew he was outmatched on the feet, so he just went for wrestling attempts and takedowns. He landed 4 of 7 in the fight, and it was just like one of those like boring spots where it was like, dude, you're only doing that because you know you're going to get knocked out if you stand up too long. So maybe that left a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth, but in our reality, this is my one weight for a reason. These guys match up extremely well. They both have strengths of standing up and boxing, but have mixed in the wrestling before. And I think for that reason, they both respect it enough and just stand on the feet again, respect their history from 2015, and they stand on the feet again and duke it out. I'm going to say not only do these guys get performance of the night, but Nicholas Dalby scratches out, just barely gets a decision win here against Elio Zaleski. What do you think, Jose?
Yeah, this one was a tough one. Obviously I don't have a weight on this one, but I do agree with you on Dolby. I like what he's done for his career, really turn it around. Even though he is coming off a most recent split decision loss, still going split against Renat. Renat, he's been looking just fit out. He's been on a tear himself lately. He's a scary dude. So that being said, just going split and there is no shame in that. And seeing that it's a rematch as well, and he has the win over Dos Santos, I'm sure he's already gone through everything. And I know that, like as you mentioned, both guys have definitely matured, and it's funny how they're meeting up again. But I just think Dolby has just been very legit on a tear, and I just think even having that slight bit of confidence, like just knowing like he did beat him before, it's like maybe there's like that thing in the back of his mind like he should be able to do it again. I think it is definitely just gonna go a long way in this one. Dos Santos. As you mentioned, yeah, dude is scary good though too. He's beaten some big names on there too. I'm seeing Sean Strickland on here, and he has a win over Sean Strickland and Benoit Saint Denis. So he's been up and down the way. Oh, that must have been when Sean Strickland was a welterweight, so that makes sense. And so yeah. I'm going with Nicholas Dalby on this, but it's a tough one because Dos Santos does seem to just come in and beat some legit dudes every once in a while, like in multiple weight classes as well, like Benoit Saint Denis. So that being said, I have no weight on it, but I do like your pick in Nicholas Dalby.
Sounds good. All right, well, that will conclude it for us here at Moneyline MMA. Thanks for listening. And as always, we'll be back next week. Quick recap before we wrap it up officially. Jose and I have our Lock of the Week tied at 8 total confidence points between Chuck Buffalo and Carlos Prates. So make sure to take one of those two or both of them for some bets this weekend. And then as well as Jose's 5-weight being Denise Gomez. So that will be his Lock of the Week. Mine is Chuck Buffalo. And then the Underdog of the Week is Gerald Mearshart. As well as making sure to return for us here next week on Monday, as always. quarter after 5 or so, because one of the bigger cards of the year will be occurring. And next 1 week from Saturday, so we'll be analyzing said card a week from today. It'll be UFC with John Jones and Stipe on the card, and we'll also be getting Michael Chandler and Charles Oliveira, if I'm not mistaken. Of course, he's just trying to hype it up, but I saw Chandler said something along the lines of he's going to bring something special or something like that into the fight against his next fight against Oliveira. So it's like, okay, buddy, what's special though? Come on, buddy. Like, what are you gonna do that's new? Come on, man. What are you gonna wrestle him? What are you gonna wrestle him? Yeah, I doubt that. Okay, but in any case, that's just an interesting thing I saw Chandler say, and interesting too because he's a plus 200 dog. So yikes, he's not looking good. He's gonna have to pull something out of nowhere. And we're also gonna get Bo Nickel versus Paul Craig. What an interesting matchup there. A wrestler versus a jiu-jitsu guy. Huh? What if Bo wrestles himself into a takedown? We'll analyze that on Monday. So make sure to subscribe and let us know down below who you'll be riding with this weekend. And thanks for watching.